So let's go ahead and get started now. I am Susan Ingalls, and I am so pleased to welcome you all to today's Sustainability Essentials webinar, in which Katie Storey will be talking with us about what we can do to reduce waste, a subject in which she has expertise. She and I both want to hear from you. However, we have you on mute. So as you have questions and comments, please send them in via the chat box. And our plan is to get to them after we've made this presentation. I'm going to start by telling y'all a little bit about Sustainable Furnishings Council. I want to be sure you all have the gist of it, knowing that we are in our 15th year now. We are a membership organization, and our member companies are involved in the residential furnishings industry in various ways. So they might supply materials or services. They might manufacture any kind of furnishings products, be stores where these things are sold, or be design firms that are specifying these things. And importantly, among our members are environmental conservation organizations like World Wildlife Fund, which did a lot to help get us started, as did Rainforest Alliance. And we are ever grateful for that and for their continued involvement with us. Back when we started, our first job was to determine what are best practices for sustainability in the residential furnishings industry, and then to set standards for recognizing exemplary implementation of those practices, and then to start educating the industry ourselves and to start building markets, which, as y'all know, have grown tremendously in the last 15 years for more eco-friendly products and services. Some few years ago, we started the Sustainable Furnishings Education Fund, through which we serve the industry at large, not just our members. And we also serve the industry at large with our educational programming, especially our Green Leaders course, which is a 6-hour, 6 CEU course that covers a lot more of the kinds of things we're going to be covering today. So if you are interested in this, please consider taking the Green Leaders course, and please consider joining us, where you will be in a movement of 400 companies in this industry, each of which has made their own public and verifiable commitment to sustainability, to transparency, and to continuous improvement. It's a good place to be. So as y'all know, sustainability is an umbrella term, and there are lots of interrelated issues that fall under this wide umbrella of sustainability. We at Sustainable Furnishings Council tend to worry about all of them, and we put our attention where we know we can have the largest impact. Since we are a global manufacturing industry, we use a lot of electricity to run our factories and to transport materials and finished goods huge long distances. So we are burning a lot of fossil fuels and contributing a lot to greenhouse gas emissions that way. We are also, as an industry, even though we are a smallish industry, we are the #3 user of wood in all the world. So we have a large responsibility for halting deforestation, which is such an important thing, given that forests are our most efficient carbon absorbers. In those forests, there are many species that are threatened with extinction. In fact, their extinctions are one of the most pressing crises in the several that our planet is currently facing. Our industry uses a lot of hazardous chemicals in our processes and in our specific products, but there are 5 of them that are most common in furnishings. And a lot of those end up as waste. All of those can exist in textiles, but a lot of those end up as waste in our air and polluting our water and polluting our solid land. Water is often polluted specifically by harmful chemicals used in leather tanning, but textiles as well. There are various things that threaten the quality of our water. And there are other threats to healthy life on our planet, including social equity threats. We all have noticed that there are great disparities in our communities between the haves and the have-nots, but many of us are surprised to learn that even in this day and age, forced labor is used to cultivate cotton, for instance, in 19 different countries. And finally, on this subject of sustainability issues in our industry, we throw away way too much furniture. At this point, we're throwing away 12 million tons of furniture every year, and it's making up a significant part of US landfill waste. And on top of that are the textiles that we throw away. So we address these things with our initiatives like the Wood Furniture Scorecard, in which we assess retailers on whether they have a robust policy for making decisions about the wood furniture that they specify, that they choose and buy. We'll be publishing the 2021 Wood Furniture Scorecard in October. So I hope you'll attend a meeting when we talk about those results on October 18th. The Wood Furniture Scorecard is part of our concern about what's it made of. The What's It Made Of initiative specifically is about addressing the harmful chemicals that are most commonly found in furnishings, which include VOCs like formaldehyde, the flame retardant chemicals, the PFAS chemicals that are so popular, especially in our stain treatments, the antimicrobials that we use in mattresses and in many outdoor products, and PVC or vinyl, which is hidden in many, many furnishings products. Each of these is directly linked to harm to human health, and each of these persists in the environment. And further, each of these impedes recyclability of materials that these chemicals are used on. So we've got a problem, y'all, and we have a problem with the planet warming. We've got a problem with pollution overall, so with too much waste in our air. And here we're seeing the way the planet has warmed since early in the Industrial Revolution. This warming is, of course, being caused by greenhouse gases, which are pollutants that result from our agro-industrial processes. And you can see that the planet is pretty good in red by now. We're also all the more aware of this because of the recent IPCC report. But it's not only our air that is polluted, it is also our landfills that are overfilled and our waters that are polluted. So it's important that we do everything we can to reduce waste. And I am very, very pleased that Sustainable Furnishings Council member Katie Storey of Storey Design and of the Good Future Design Alliance is here with us today to talk about reducing waste and to tell us more about this organization. and Katie, I'm going to let you tell more about yourself, but I will just say that you are based in San Francisco, have been designing from that home base in San Francisco for years, and out of those years of experience you were inspired to start the Good Future Design Alliance. So thank you very much for all of that and for being here with us. Tell us more.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Susan. Do I have control now of the screen?
You do. You can forward the slides.
Okay, beautiful.
And if you have trouble, I'll do it, but you can do it.
Okay, let's see how I do. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Susan, first off, for having me here today. And thank you to everyone who's attending. I know schedules are busy, it's summer, there's a million things to distract us. So I appreciate you showing up for this important topic. As Susan said, we do have a lot of work to do in a lot of areas around sustainability. And so what I was hoping to do today is tell you a little bit about the Good Future Design Alliance and why I started it, why it's so important right now in today's climate and environment, and some ways to reduce waste for anyone who's listening and wanting to know some tips today, and then kind of if you want to get more involved. And like Susan said, I think at the end we can take plenty of questions that I may or may not be able to answer, but it would be fun to have a nice discussion afterwards. So I will start with my first slide. So yeah, like Susan said, I am an interior designer first, and I am based in San Francisco, and I have a small team, but we do plenty of projects. I think there are a handful of designers on this call, so you can relate to the hustle that a small business or a large firm requires. And so we are small in number, but we do dozens of projects a year, which is about hundreds of thousands of square feet a year. And so through this practice, I was very privy to the amount of waste that we are creating in the industry. So I created the Good Future Design Alliance. Susan, I might need your help.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
I do not mind a bit. There we go.
Great. So the Good Future Design Alliance is a community of design and build professionals who are dedicated to reducing our waste by 50% over 5 years. So this community, I'll get more into who's in it, but just to start us off, that is what we're talking about here today, the Good Future Design Alliance. Next slide is a recent quote from Lonnie magazine, which kind of talks about how we are paving the way for a more sustainable future. We're a network of architects, interior designers, builders, landscapers, and makers committed to reducing waste in the industry. So I wanted to mention those two things before I backtrack just a second and tell you how this came to be. So as I was saying, I'm an interior designer with doing hundreds of thousands of square feet a year, which is pretty standard. By the time you add up all the projects, that's thousands of pieces of furniture and textiles and rugs, and just look around your house. It's everything that it encompasses, right? So I was doing this for about 8 years. As Susan mentioned, I live in San Francisco, so I actually live quite a green, sustainable life. I ride my bike, or we compost, we barely take the trash out. So in my life, I was living a very clean, sustainable way, but in the hustle and bustle of building a business in the Bay Area, or really any city, like in this industry, I got swept up into the waste. I got swept up into what is happening to all of us. And so it got pretty bad a few years ago when a couple things happened kind of within a few weeks of each other, which really caused like a change in my thinking. The first of those things was that I ordered a sofa in Oakland, which is across the bay from San Francisco, and it went to North Carolina by Susan's home before coming back to San Francisco. And I just thought that was crazy. It went 3,000 extra miles to, it only needed to go 7 miles across the Bay Bridge, but it went 3,000 across the country and came back. Plus, it took an extra 2 months for that journey to happen. And we all know about global supply chains now, which are just outrageous. But this was a few years ago before the problem of extra delays were really long. But so that was the first thing, the sofa. And then the second thing is I was at an install downtown for one of our commercial clients, because we do commercial design as well. And all I could really see, instead of this beautiful design that we'd been working on for a year, were the piles and piles of packaging materials, of plastic wrap, of packaging peanuts, of styrofoam, of I remember the office space had a patio, and so we had these concrete planters that were wrapped in hundreds of feet of plastic for an outdoor setting of concrete. Like, they didn't need to come in plastic. And so it was kind of these two events, between the 3,000 extra miles of the sofa and then all the packaging waste, that I couldn't even see the beauty through all the waste, literally. I was like, okay, we have to start on a different path. So I started with my firm on a different path and started making incremental changes. I also started looking into who was doing what. There is B Corp, there's LEED certification, there's Declare labels, there's all kinds of things. There's Sustainable Furnishings Council. I called Susan and said, what are you doing? How does this work? And I found wonderful organizations. Clearly, all those that I named are doing great work, and we want to keep that going. But what I found is that there wasn't one alliance that was focused on this issue of waste, which is so prevalent, so present, so tangible in our lives. There also wasn't an organization focused on waste that included the entire industry. Sustainable Furnishings Council does include the whole industry, but we are trying to get very micro kind of about what we're focusing on before tackling other things. So what I did is I started calling, like I said, I called Susan, I called the San Francisco Department of the Environment, I called Recology, which is the Bay Area waste management company, and then I called about 20 designer friends from the Bay Area who were kind of top designers, and said, I'm losing sleep over this, what can I do? Do you want to join me on this journey? So January 2020, we launched the Good Future Design Alliance right before COVID. We've only been able to have one in-person event so far in our 18 months of existence, but so it goes. So there you have it. So that's kind of the backstory. I wanted to just kind of like explain how we got, how the Good Future Design Alliance even came to be. So Susan, if you don't mind, the next slide. Sorry, my controls aren't that great. So as we all know on this call, the design and build industry does have a serious waste problem. Next slide. In this country alone, we purchase 2 times more furniture than Europeans, and significantly more than much larger populations, including China and India. So we buy more furniture than anyone in the world in the US. And so that tells you about our consumption. And then on the disposal side, growth in furniture disposal has outpaced growth in the US population. And Americans now dispose of 12 million tons of furniture annually, according to the EPA. This is 6 times more than in 1960, which Susan mentioned that stat too at the beginning of the call. This is kind of like a pretty well-known statistic right now, and it's kind of astonishing. Like, if you think 1960, that wasn't that long ago, but you think about how much there is, how many online retailers, how much exposure there is, everyone's shopping online. So it does kind of make sense that this has just like blown up in scale. But that's kind of setting the stage. And then next slide, please. with our industry alone, there are 500 million tons of construction and demolition debris generated in the US annually. So like that's a little hard to even fathom, but that includes everything from roofing materials, concrete, baseboards, rebar, just anything with construction and demo. 500 million tons every year goes into the landfill. That's also from the US EPA. And then next slide is really relevant to furniture, which is, sorry, back one, 12.2 million tons of furniture end up in the landfill every year. So of those 500 million tons of construction debris, there's still 12.2 million tons of furniture that end up in the landfill. And then next slide, in San Francisco alone, which you consider to be a fairly green, progressive city, 30% of landfills are filled with construction waste. And last week with the GFDA, we actually had Recology on our programming, and they do a phenomenal job of actually diverting a lot of waste. So I give them a ton of credit, but even so, 30% of the landfills are still filled with construction waste. And that includes things that cannot be recycled or resold or like reused in other types of housing. So that's a phenomenal amount for such a progressive city where they divert about 80% of landfill waste. So that kind of sets the scene for our industry. Clearly we have a big issue. Clearly we have a lot of work to do. Next slide, please. So in a time when we are consuming 2 times more than the planet can generate, I feel strongly, as does Susan and many others, that we have to find a new way to do what we do. So a little more about the Good Future Design Alliance. So with all of this information, all of these stats, I was like, whoa, this is even bigger than I was imagining. I knew my piles from my small firm were big of waste, but the more I dug into the whole industry, the more it just like was exponentially horrifying. So we're asking for we started in San Francisco, like I said, before COVID. We now have chapters in San Francisco and the Denver, Boulder area. We're going to be expanding nationally, a few more chapters this fall in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Seattle, and Nashville. And what we're doing is asking any design and build professional. So that's probably many of you on the call. So whether you're an interior designer, an architect, a landscape designer, a builder, or a product maker, we're asking you to join this alliance to reduce your waste. And the reason we want all of you to join is because it's much more impactful if we're all in this together. Who cares if my firm is doing anything or if thousands of interior designers are doing something when you go to a job site and the general contractor throws everything away. Like all your efforts are kind of for naught. And so that is really sad because I would work super hard or you would work really hard to be sustainable and do a good job and bill your client accordingly, only for everything to just go in the landfill anyway. So it just feels a little bit like greenwashing, but also just like a sad story of like, you know, all these efforts for naught, literally. So next slide, please. So we are asking for in the 50% reduction includes everything like 50% fewer sofas in the landfill, 50% fewer packaging peanuts in the ocean, and 50% fewer teardowns. So those are examples of what we're getting to with our 50%. It is a very big ask, we realize that, but we also, I believe, and many of our members believe that we are at this really pivotal point. I mean, where we have to start designing and building and making differently. We have to, not only do we have to like adjust to global climate change, I think we have to do more and really be proactive and say, no, we are going to stop it, maybe even reverse it. And our contribution, not only as humans, but as design and build industry professionals, is really significant. And so if we can get this under control, by reducing our waste, then we are at least doing our part. And I feel really, everyone wants to do their part right now. It's too dire of a world out there to not, to be honest. That's how I feel. So it is a radical goal, 50% over 5 years, but we do think it's necessary. And so how do we get there? When you join, if somebody joins, and we encourage anyone at any stage to join, whether you're like brand new as a design professional, maybe a sole proprietor, or maybe you're a 100-person firm. Maybe you're doing a ton of great work in sustainability, or maybe you have no idea what to do yet. Any of that's okay. We really want you in this alliance because, again, more members making the commitment and making the changes in their business models is more impact and more chance to reduce our waste and really like reverse some of the damage that we've done. So anyone can join, and when you join, you would take like a baseline survey and we see where you are. Maybe you're doing great, maybe you're not, doesn't really matter. And then we provide you like 10 to 12 different steps, kind of like a guided tour on how to reduce your waste. And this includes the full cycle of a project, for example. So if you're an interior designer and you sign on and you say, great, I want to make this commitment, I have no idea how to do it, help me. You grab the toolkit that we've created, and in it are ways to source better with specific places to shop from that have been vetted. There are ways to dispose, which also have been vetted, and those are like by region. Some of them are national accounts, like the National Mattress Recycling, for example. That's national, but we are really trying to have more local resources too available. We have talking points with your clients because we know that there are lots of sticking points. Name a sticking point and we'll like have an answer to help you walk through it. And so we have talking points, we have checklists for each stage of the project, from the first conversation with clients or potential clients. You really want to set your intention and set your set your integrity around how you want to design. And then, once you're in the demolition phase, once you're in the sourcing phase, we have like checklists literally that will help you reduce your waste through there. We also have networking events. We have member portals. We have a lot of things. I don't need to go through every bullet, but basically we are tackling the problem by both ends. Yesterday, Susan hosted a really good talk on waste reduction, and there was a ton of talk about how to get rid of waste, which is certainly crucial. Recycling is so important. And we do include that with some of our resources, but we also are thinking about how we're sourcing and if we need to source so much, because recycling is wonderful. Trust me, that's one of the principles we were founded on, the GFDA, but that can't be the only solution. We have to think holistically and kind of like cradle to cradle, or, we have to think about the beginning and the end. So some of these, next slide, please, Susan. So for example, some of the tips, there are many more than this, but I thought I would just, throw this out for when you're starting a project. Again, whether you're an interior designer or an architect or even a builder or a landscaper, it's like these are all applicable, whether you're looking for roofing materials, tiles, dining tables. I'm looking around this apartment. I'm on an install right now, to be honest. So I'm not in my usual setup, but I am looking around at all this stuff. And we've sourced from quite a few GFDA members for this project, which makes me happy. But so tips for reducing your waste. So buy local. This is a really obvious one, but it's also so important right now, especially after COVID. Think of all the small businesses that are hurting, have been hurting. Some are thriving, but very few. That's a small percentage of the small business. And so buy local. It supports your community. You get to know people a lot better. Buy resale. This is a really fun one, I think. And this can include everything from vintage, thrifting, garage sales, antique sales, any of those things. And I actually think, and I've talked to many designers who are our members, and initially it seemed somewhat constrictive. We got a little pushback on that, like, but it actually is kind of fun, right? It takes you on this whole other course for sourcing. And I actually find it to be much more fun. It doesn't mean that you have to buy everything resale, because some clients aren't going to be into that. And I don't even encourage that. But if you can start incorporating from the beginning more local and more resale, those are like huge ways to reduce your waste right there. And then, as Susan mentioned, they do great work with wood scorecards. So buying FSC certified wood products is a great way to reduce the footprint. Buying non-toxic textiles, another great way. And that's very important for many reasons. Certainly just like your overall health of your family, health of your interior environment. It's really, especially now with the endemic that we're in, these things are going to become much more important. And then buy certified products. So again, that's Declare label, Cradle to Cradle, B Corp, and the many others that you're probably aware of. So those are some tips. Again, that's not exhaustive, but it gives you an idea of kind of the direction we're going in. Next slide. And so that was the front end. Like, you start a project, you're so excited, at least I get excited, like the world is my oyster. What am I going to source? How can but instead of sourcing 100% new out there with online retailers, apply some of those tips that I just mentioned. And then on the back end, tips for reducing waste. So this is everything from everything about removal and disposal. And again, this is not exhaustive, but a few ideas that are really easy, low-hanging fruit. Donate your stuff. There are so many people in need right now. There's so many immigrants. There's so many refugees. There's so many people in foster care. We partner with a really great organization here in the Bay Area called Make It Home Bay Area. And so they furnish, they provide furniture for people who are graduating from or like coming out of foster care. So that's a great one. Look around, see where the donation centers are. And not just the Goodwills, because Goodwill is actually like getting pretty crowded right now. After the COVID purge that everyone had, like they're actually saying like, don't bring us too much more. So look at the other community organizations. That's what we try and provide for members. So like, for example, in San Francisco, we have some 415 numbers, local area code, where you can call and literally say, hi, Susan, or hi, Katie, I have stuff. So we really try and make that connection very easy, rather than just calling like an 800 number. So donate. Think about selling. This I offer for my clients all the time. Yes, it's more work, but it's less work for the client, and it makes you look like a star because you've gotten it off their hands. And depending on how you structure your contract, maybe you make a little money or you give it back to them. Doesn't matter, you figure that out, but it's a great way to keep furniture out of the landfill. There's the free cycle networks, which are getting a ton of movement right now. Lots of articles recently in the New York Times and various design blogs of how it's like the best thing in COVID. Everyone's joining these free cycle movements. And it's also trash to treasure, I kind of say. Share it with your neighborhood. I use Nextdoor a ton, which is a great resource. Craigslist also. And then these last three are refurbish, revitalize, repurpose. They're kind of like the R's. There are a lot of R's in this topic. Reduce, reuse, recycle, refurbish, revitalize, repurpose. There's a lot. Reduce. But this is really key. And we also partner with a few different revitalizers, including Amy Fredrickson of Revital East. She works nationally, and again, on this install that I'm literally sitting at the table, where we revitalized the table and recaned the dining chairs. So, that is a really nice way to reduce waste. It's not, you can't do that with every piece of furniture, clearly. Like, you're probably not going to refurbish an IKEA or a low cost item but there are plenty of heirloom pieces and vintage pieces that would be perfect to revitalize, put a new coat of paint, change the leg, change the handles, and it's a totally different story. And so those are some of the tips for reducing waste. I wanted to share just like a little preview of ways that we suggest to reduce waste. And all of these things, if you think about it, we're asking for 50% over 5 years. So that's very doable. If you start incorporating some of these, like once a month, you say like, okay, this is our month to focus on donations. This is our month to source locally. You know, it's almost like if anyone's done the 21-day, I don't know, cleanse or diet or whatever, like try to start running. The first few steps are really painful and you want to quit and you say, this is stupid, I don't like it, I'm not going to make any money this way, this is not worth my effort. And then all of a sudden you're just doing it. Like truthfully, I have kind of beta tested this GFDA toolkit, and now I incorporate all of these practices and more, and it's just kind of second nature. I don't see it as a burden. I see it as just a way of being. I talk to my clients differently about this. I'm sharing that because it's very possible. And that's what we're hearing from our members too. Like the starting point is it's rough. It's always hard to start something new, but once you start doing it and you're a few weeks in, then it's actually like really rewarding and your clients appreciate it. And the other bit of feedback that we've gotten that I actually think is really important is most of us on the call, I don't know who's actually on, but design and build professionals, like we are in such a place, I think, of like privilege because we are designing and creating like the built world, whether it's a cafe, a library, a home, an office, like we're responsible for all the sights and smells and colors and everything we see, right? And so I really think that with this privilege, and I think it's a privilege because it's so fun. It is just like the best career, and I've had 2 others before this. But so being like a creator of a built environment is a privilege, but I think with that, just like with any privilege, comes like a responsibility to do more, to learn more about our impact, and so that then we can be like better informed to tell our clients about more responsible textiles, about donations, about buying less stuff, you know? So I really think that that's on us because people always ask, like, do clients come to us or do we go to clients? And it's like maybe 50-50 now, but I think it's still up to us as design and build professionals to really lead the way. It's like if you hire a lawyer or a doctor or a graphic designer, you want them to bring all their knowledge to you, and you want them to talk to you about the most responsible ways to move forward. I kind of think of our role in this as the same. Next slide, please, Susan. I'll kind of start wrapping up to leave some time for questions, but so basically, like I started the GFDA in San Francisco, but we are quickly growing into a national movement. And we are growing quickly, but we're also growing strategically around where we want to plant seeds and where we want to form communities. So, and by that, anyone can join from anywhere in the country. And we have people all over the country who have joined. But when we officially launch a new chapter, it's because we've gone in and talked to local waste management, we've talked to donation centers, we've talked to environmental partners so that we can offer our members the best resources for success. Because really, like, why are we doing this if not for success? Like, I always think about that with my team or on a project, like, let's set ourselves up for success. I feel like the same here. So that's why we're thinking of opening 3 to 5 chapters a year. We are following where there's interest. There's been a ton of interest in, first off, Colorado, Denver, Boulder, and now we're going to be going to Nashville, Minneapolis, and Seattle this fall, like I said. And then I'm just going to share a few little slides about, if you could move forward, please, Susan. So one thing that kind of sets the GFDA apart is that we are mission driven. I mean, I know many organizations are, but we are really mission driven around waste and impact. We're not tackling everything under the sun. We are tackling waste. If we really succeed with that, that will be a success and we'll move on to something else. There's a lot of work to do with waste though. We take a very localized approach, which is what I was just describing about how we expand into new territories. We're community oriented, and this is really important to me. We are not about shaming anyone. We're not about making anyone feel bad. We are really about like building community and learning opportunities for each other in this network. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to have as many events, but we're really ramping that up now. We have more resources and COVID is maybe entering a new phase. It's designer led, which I think is a little different. It's not an outside organization telling us to do better. It's led by me and many others now who are designers and builders. Like we practice this every day. So we're coming up with solutions that are really practical. We try and be realistic because again, like I'm a designer. I don't want to go out of business. I don't want to not achieve my goals. Like, so we try and be realistic, ambitious, but realistic. We're always evolving because the science is always evolving. And then we're really transparent too. So again, if you can join whether you've like never recycled anything at all before, or you can join if you've been doing this for 40 years. You know, we want transparency. We want to build a community that's intergenerational, that's diverse and inclusive, where we can learn from each other. Next slide, please. And then just, I don't need to read all these names off, but just so you have an idea of some of our founding members, I gathered a group of 16 from the Bay Area, including Sustainable Furnishings. You can read the others. So these are some of the first firms in the Bay Area who signed on and said they wanted to commit. Next slide. We also have quite a few partners, a couple logos I'm missing, but Make It Home is the donation center that I mentioned. Revitalist is the revitalization company. Renovation Angel is this incredible national company who removes and basically they recycle your kitchen. They take it out for you and then they resell it. And if it's large enough for some of the high net worth clients, it can really impact your tax. It can be a great tax deduction, I should say. So anyway, we have a bunch of partners. And then next slide is just a little preview of some of our members. We currently have close to 200 members. I couldn't put them on here. You can go to the website if you want to see them. And then next slide. And then if you are interested in becoming a member, great. I'm not going to go through all of this, but maybe Susan is going to share the presentation later, or you can just reach out to us. But you can see our GFDA member benefits include all these bullets. Most of them I already went over. And then the next slide is a few more benefits of becoming a member. And last slide, I think, Susan. And then just to wrap up with Recology, a quote from them, the waste management here in the Bay Area, that we need the collective efforts like those of the Good Future Design Alliance to help create a path forward. And I really was appreciative of John saying this, because it's true. We do need something like the GFDA, but also just to stress, like we need Sustainable Furnishings Council, we need the GFDA, we need B Corp, we need LEED, we need all of us really to be in this conversation and doing the great work. I mean, Susan's been doing it for 15 years, so you know so much more. We're so new and young compared to you, and I really appreciate all the support you've given us and all that you have taught me, and I hope that I can teach other people what I do and what I know. And so just the last slide is my information, and then I don't know, can we have some time to talk or questions now, Susan?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's have some questions and answers. Oops, that's what I wanted to leave up while we're here. One question I have, Katie, is when a company joins, that's when their commitment to reducing by 50% over 5 years starts, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's from your initiation day.
Yeah, yeah, cool. And so I bet as an organization, you're going to be able to measure the impact you're having as an organization, right? It seems
Exactly.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
One company would be a year in and one company would be a month in when you did an annual report, maybe.
exactly. And so we are working on our first annual report right now because we just launched in
Yeah,
2020. But yes, exactly. So we just take the information from our current members, whether you're a month in when we do it or a year, and we just, some of our reporting, like we just created a partnership that we'll be announcing soon where our reporting is going to really be ramped up. And so like there'll be a better way to track your waste because we've been kind of doing it informally through like Google
yeah,
Forms and surveys. But yeah, we're partnering with a big company now to help us track it.
excellent. That's perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Well, we have several questions from the audience. And the first one is this: how do we address the amount of used furniture proliferating on the market with toxic flame retardants?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. There is a lot of used furniture out there. You're right. I would say that the toxic materials potentially you could refurbish, like if a chair or a sofa was used with toxic um, fabric, you could repurpose it.
Mhm.
And then you still have the bone, if the bones of the sofa are good, for example.
Yeah,
That's what I would recommend. That's a great question because once it's already made, it is
yeah,
hard to dispose of. I mean, Susan,
yeah.
maybe you can chime in
I
here
have
too.
something to add here. So anything made in California between 1978 and 2013 likely does have flame retardants in the foam. Anything made for the California market. And many things made for any market across the country will have flame retardants in the foam. If you're wondering whether it is in the foam of the sofa you got at the store, but your local resale store, you can actually get it tested at Berkeley and at Duke University. There are labs, it's free. They take a certain number every month. So if they might say, sorry, we've got to wait till next month to do you. We're at capacity this month, but you just cut off a little marble size piece of the foam and mail it to them. And they put it through their lab equipment and tell you whether that foam has flame retardants or not. Now, I don't know whether you can also get this test done for fabrics because flame retardants are sometimes on the fabrics. And the test that I know of that is ongoing at Duke University and at Berkeley is specifically for foam. But that is a way you can find out if it's got that harmful chemical. If you're wondering about the PFAS chemicals, Notre Dame is a leader in research on that. And that university might, I don't know that they've got a similar program, but they might have. Okay, here's the next question. As a commercial doing stores, for instance, interior designer, we have seen so much waste when we do a project. How do we convince mall owners to help and implement these values of recycling and repurposing? and you've spoken to this a little bit, Katie. One of our former member companies is Avant-Garde Innovative, that sells machines to malls so that everybody at the mall puts their styrofoam in, and then Avant-Garde gets the compressed styrofoam, for instance. But you said you've got talking points in your toolkit. Are some of them for talking to mall owners or those who have power over a series of businesses?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that is a huge opportunity. Like the bigger your client is, whether it's SFO airport or a hospital or a mall, yes, if you can get them on board early by explaining to them that the materials that all these kids are going to be climbing on in a mall or in an airport need to be non-toxic, that the furniture needs to be really durable to last for generations. That's actually a cost savings to the mall owner, right? If you don't have to like buy new furniture all the time. There are also like supporting the local economy. Like I know here at San Francisco Airport, they have revitalized, or they've renovated all of their terminals, but they have worked with a local company here to revitalize all of the furniture and refinish it. And so like that was a huge bonus to the local economy. And it ended up being like all three terminals I think are really beautiful. So I think that, stating all the reasons right now, and the climate, like the conversation is changing. More and more people are aware, even mall owners, like everyone's becoming aware of like the impact we're having on the planet. So I would say, talk about local, talk about the community, talk about the safety of the materials for patrons to the mall, talk about cost. That's one thing I forgot to mention. We do have like cost analysis that to get you started, to kind of talk about what costs more, what doesn't, how much more things cost.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, speaking of that, next question is a comment on cost. I'm a designer in the San Francisco Bay Area. She says, as a side business, I resell on eBay, Etsy, and Cherish. My profit margin is 78 to 80% for the art and antiques that I resell in my online customers and clients. So that is great to be able to make. That's a significant new revenue stream for a business, to be able to do that. Yeah, yeah.
Good for you. And that's one thing that I think about a lot. Most, the markup model varies by firm, certainly, but I always say that, and that's one thing with the industry, it's built on this markup model. And so like maybe someday we're going to change that model and you're going to just have a fee for service and fee for your value rather than fee for purchasing. Because really, like if you think of thousands of items that you're then marking up on, like that's quite a bit of profit. Understandable why people do that. But if we could start changing that model. And the other thing real quick on that is, to your point, whoever the person was, making 70 to 80%, that's what I always say of like, if you buy at any kind of resale store, you can still mark up on things, but you might even be able to mark up more, to your point, it makes 70, 80%. So it's not, by implementing these strategies, you don't have to lose money. In fact, we want you to be successful.
Exactly, exactly. And on selling secondhand furniture, it is a way for a retailer, for a store also to increase profits by adding another income stream that could have a larger profit margin per item than than something they buy new. Next question is this. Have any mega firms in design and build expressed interest in or already joined you? Do you have any really big companies?
What's a really big company?
Well, you get to say, you can, but somebody who's working nationally or internationally. So so would have a lot of impact when they make an improvement. And many designers do work, now you yourself are working across the country today.
Yeah, so in our first year, most of our members were smaller and medium-sized firms. We are now in our second year, and we have a bunch, actually quite a few corporate accounts that are going to be coming on, that I don't think I should mention yet, but yes, we are looking at the larger companies and getting a lot of interest from big companies and retailers who are starting to take this really seriously.
Great.
And
great,
if you want to see our members, they are on the website.
Great, great, good, good, good. Let's see if there are any other questions here. That might be all. Here we go. Here's another question. Thank you for this great information. I'm definitely interested in joining. As an aside, I'm not sure we could move to a solely fee-based model. Design firms take on a great deal of liability when procuring furnishings. My firm didn't become profitable until I started selling trade items. So that's interesting. And it is a bigger question about, there it is. We had a request for your contact info, Katie. It is a bigger question too about how, when we do need to make so much big change in our world, and when we make big change, we do change systems and is you're pointing out possibly business models, but that is a big change, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's going to be a little while, but it would be a huge step towards reducing waste if we had another way to make significant income other than buying and selling products, right? If just like our value and our knowledge base was built differently. Not to say that we don't charge for that, but I just think it's very skewed towards consumption. Could you just hold on one second? Thanks. That's okay. So it's, it's really skewed towards consumption, and I think if we can scale back a little, we'll get there.
Yeah, good. And we are at the end of our hour. We do, one last question has come in that we might or might not really have time to address, but what public policy change would be most catalytic for GFDA's mission? Would it be extended producer responsibility on specific products? We know that in Europe, furniture is part of extended producer responsibility laws, and it's being considered now in California.
Yeah, that is a great question, and probably one I'd love to, like, whoever's asking, we can maybe email about it. Yeah, I think there's, like, Susan, you and I were talking yesterday about how in Maine they just they're trying to pass the bill, or maybe they just passed it, of like the packaging, the packaging. So I think that is something that's pretty significant and would change the way companies pack their materials. Like, do you have to put all this excessive stuff if you're actually paying for it? So yeah, that's a great question though. I'd love to keep talking about it.
Yeah, good. Well, the American Sustainable Business Council is working on packaging and on extended producer responsibility. So that's, and we're coordinating as we can with them. So we'll make sure everybody on the call knows about those efforts. And this is recorded, and so that recording will be available to everybody when they want to revisit any of this conversation. Katie, thank you so much. Thank you for all you've shared with us today. Thank you for what you are doing. This is a huge contribution to transformation, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Susan. I mean, I couldn't do it without you. I called you early on, and it's so fun being involved with you, and thanks for having me.
It's great. It's great. Onward. So
Yes.
I hope everybody will join us again next month when we're online again. And in the meantime, have a good day.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Susan.
Bye. Bye.